Welcome to Credentialing Chronicles, where we spill the doctor tea hotter than your morning coffee.
And give you the insider scoop in the wild world of credentialing, provider drama, and everything they don't teach you in med school.
I'm Shannen, and she's Nyleen, two credentialing pros with front row seats to all the chaos.
From fraud scandals to burnout breakdowns and why your favorite surgeon might actually be banned from 5 hospitals.
We got the gossip and the practical advice to keep you out of trouble and ahead of the game.
So grab your coffee, your compliance checklist, and maybe a lawyer, and let's get into it.
Welcome back to Credentialing Chronicles, the podcast where we lift the curtain on the credentialing drama they don't teach you in orientation. I'm Shannen.
And I'm Nyleen, and baby, today's episode, buckle in. We're talking fraud, felonies, and surgical Saturdays, plus a second story that'll have you whispering kickback in your sleep. But first, Shannen, our disclaimer.
As always, our disclaimer, the cases we will be sharing with you are all available through public court records and documents. We promise we are not sharing any privileged or private information, and we have never actually personally credentialed these practitioners. We will not release the names of the practitioners, but we will give you all of the other juicy details.
This episode of Credentialing Chronicles is sponsored by Advanced Quality Compliance, your white glove credentialing crew. We get it. One person doing the work of 5, audit season looming, files all over the place. AQC steps in with expert hands and calm minds, digitizing your chaos, handling the details, and keeping you audit ready 24/7. Think less stress, more success with a touch of luxury. No stress, no mess, just AQC white glove service. Visit aqccvo.com to get started.
So we're going to talk about felonies today. Felonies. Well, we're going to talk about one called Scalpel Whisperer. And here's the summary. So, surgeon, we're going to call him Dr. Saturday. He stacked up surgeries, girl, like pancakes every Saturday morning at a certain hospital that, shall we say, loved revenue streams. And I know we've talked about this recently in the last few episodes, but this one is crazy. While he was in that operating room, he was doing early inductions, unnecessary hysterectomies, and surgeries without the appropriate consent forms. So apparently, like, Medicaid has a separate consent form for certain procedures. So at one point, over a third of his deliveries were scheduled before 39 weeks with paperwork that magically altered to actually make them look like the moms were at full term, but they weren't.
Let me guess. And everyone looked the other way, I'm sure, right?
Well, right. Through the red flags, they looked right through them like if they were invisible. They were white or something, or clear. So the staff did raise some concerns, but leadership, of course, they just loved those Saturday billing numbers. And while patients were getting sterilized without proper consent, the hospital was just cashing in.
As we always hear about.
So that's why this time we are going to talk about the hospital itself getting indicted. But you know me, I go down rabbit holes, so we're going to have to cover the doctor and the hospital girl. But anyway, we're going to talk about the hospital itself getting criminally indicted. Not a settlement, but a full-on federal grand jury indictment.
So, hospitals are never criminally charged. Usually we don't hear about that. What do they mean, that they can't handcuff the hospital and take it to jail?
Well, it is rare, and it's actually... If you want to laugh, I think it's rarer than a clean privileging packet on a Friday afternoon. But anyway, the Department of Justice said that the conduct of this hospital was so egregious and so embedded that they had no choice to basically go down that route. So they used this doctor's billing and they were coding the cases like medically necessary, except they weren't. So it was like all levels of fraud, incorrect medical records, all of it.
That's crazy. And the hospital just let him roll with it. Like, he pretty much could do whatever he wanted, it sounds like.
Yes, but see, when I tell you it was egregious, girl, let me tell you. Okay, the reason it was egregious is because it's not just the doctor falsifying medical records. This doctor actually also had a criminal record. He had federal felony convictions plus a history of getting booted from another hospital for, guess what? Performing unnecessary surgeries. Despite all that, girl, his privileges were renewed and granted for how many times? How many times do you think it could maybe, get skipped or get missed or get pushed through credentialing?
I'm sure only a couple.
Girl, his privileges were renewed. His license was renewed for 35 years.
Ay. And he was kicked out of another hospital. He probably tried to do this mess over there too, and they said no. 35 years of a credentialing blind spot sounds like more credentialing amnesia.
Yeah, exactly. So this is where I started going down my rabbit hole. Because I was like, there's no way. 35 years, there's no way. Maybe he was like skipping states or skipping hospitals. Like, no, girl, it was all one hospital, recredentialing. But he did have licenses in other states. West Virginia, New York, and Georgia. Some overlapped, but we're going to focus on the Virginia license because that's where all this drama happened. He had an active license from 1980 to 2020. How many years is that? Right? 40 years. 40 years has an active license in Virginia. So, how many actions are on his license in the state of Virginia? I had to look it up, girl.
I know you did. What did you find out?
9. And the first one was in 1984. Okay? 1984 was the first time the Board of Medicine of Virginia was over here alerted to guess what? So, what were the allegations? 14 surgical cases performed without appropriate medical indications, including what? Unnecessary hysterectomies and other gynecological procedures.
Oh my goodness.
And guess what else? What do we always get with the slimy OBGYNs?
Some type of sexual deviance. Some type of something, nasty.
Exactly, girl. He got accused of a sexual relationship with a patient. That was 1984.
And this is in 1984. So the pattern of behavior is already there.
For 40 years. So his license got that on it. Okay, he did what he needed to do. Fine. Fast forward. We're going to give him 15 years. So fast forward to 1996. Now it's not just falsifying medical records. Now we get into criminal actions. He was convicted on 2 felony counts for filing false tax returns. So Virginia got a little excited, right? So in April, he gets convicted. Then in April, they revoke his medical license. And then he immediately, like within 7 days, right, files a petition for reinstatement. I'm a doctor. I can save the community. Girl, in June. So April, May, June, 2 months, not even 2 months later, Virginia's like, okay, doctor, yes, we need you. There's a shortage of doctors. So what do? Reinstate him with having to, what's his punishment? Treat more people. He has to do 20 hours of uncompensated care. So wait, you do something wrong. You have a history of fraud, but yeah, you have to still treat people. Like, it's just very confusing. He did have to do some community service He had to do quarterly reports and ethics course and comply with like federal probation, not just like on his license. So he had like criminal issues and then like doctor issues that he had to do on his license. And then it was reviewed a year later. Well, a year later in September, he failed to complete his required weekly community service hours.
Did they reinstate him?
Well, in February of 98, they quote unquote issue an indefinite probation. But then in September of that same year of 98, they were like, oh no, we're just going to terminate it because now he's complied. So full and unrestricted by 1999.
Even though he wasn't doing all of his stuff the whole time.
Right? Doctors get second and third chances. And I'm not saying that they don't deserve it.
So I'm saying some don't.
Some don't. So fast forward, he's complicit with some kind of scam with this hospital to get all these billings and doing all of these procedures. So now in 2019, he's charged with healthcare fraud, false statements related to healthcare.
For the Dr. Saturday stuff.
Committing all the crimes he's already done since 1984.
Already been doing since 1984. But he had to get his Dr. Saturday name. So what did he get? What did they find him for? Yeah, tell me, what was he sentenced to? 1 million years?
Well, 59 years in federal prison, restitution of $18.5 million to Medicare, Medicaid, TRICARE, Anthem, Optima, to all of them.
To all of them, not just the government ones.
Yep. All his assets were forfeited. And then finally, he had a mandatory license suspension.
Oh, that's good. After the 59 years, they said, go ahead and take the license. They didn't want him practicing medicine in prison.
Maybe those are the ones that needed the help. Too bad he couldn't.
Your face.
I mean, he had to help the community. He might as well help his own community now.
I mean, yeah, you might as well just give him the license and let him practice medicine in prison. I mean, it makes perfect sense, right?
Save the tax
dollars. That's where the real shortage is.
Exactly. Save the tax dollars. Let them get treated in jail. They don't got to be using our healthcare system.
That's crazy. 59 years. I wonder how old he was when he went into prison.
Yeah, I don't know. So if he got his first license in 84 and he had just finished.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, he's not that
he's
young.
An older gentleman.
He's probably in his 60s, yeah.
And so 59 years.
He ain't coming out of jail.
Yeah, he's not coming out. I had to calculate it, you know. Dang. All right. Well, there he goes. Dr. Saturday is now clanked in the prison.
Mm-hmm.
Dang. And the hospital. So what happened to the hospital? Did they go to jail for 59 years?
Well, the hospital wasn't just an innocent bystander, right? They were in on it. So that's why
sounds like everybody knew. Everybody.
Right, because according to the indictment, hospital employees knew exactly what was going on.
I feel like they did.
Well, one of the things that he was doing was he was submitting 2 sets of forms, one with the actual due date and then another one with a doctored due date to make it seem like
before 39.
Right, the 39 weeks. And they didn't stop him. They just let it happen over and over and over again.
So the patient's original record would come, but then he would give them the other record is what they would bill for.
Correct.
Oh my God. And so how much was that? I mean, he's operating, he's racking up what? I mean, what'd you say? 18 million he's got to pay back. So, okay, let's round it up. 20 million, fraudulent bill. I mean, much of that's going straight through the hospital system. What did you say? Medicare, Medicaid, TRICARE. You said Optum, Anthem. I think that you named them all, didn't you? And no one sees that? No flags. Nobody goes to their supervisor and says, hey, y'all, I don't get that.
Yeah. The hospital knew. They knew that he was inducing early labor. And it sucks that women are always the one who get hurt.
Women are the victims in all of our cases lately. Sterilization, their babies. Oh my God. Do you guys hear this?
Yeah. So they knew that Medicaid required a certain signed consent form for sterilizations with like a 30-day waiting period. I mean, there's like very specific rules, and still they just let them sterilize these patients, many of them poor, many of them Medicaid, without the appropriate documentation on the file just to get the billings in.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's not oversight. It sounds like the hospital was enabling him, and creating the fraud with him. And, like the patients were just literally being seen as dollars. So this wasn't a breakdown in the system. This was the system actually defrauding it over and over. And we're seeing these breakdowns. And all the time we're seeing that there's these red flags, and people just, I guess, aren't saying things or letting it be known, right?
Right. You can say that again, and the feds finally said, okay, fine. We can't do this anymore. Somehow, they doing some kind of audits or whatever it is that the government does. If anybody's listening that works in the governments and wants to let us know if they have a certain AI robot, going through these claims.
But I mean, it's not hard, right? Because it's like if they have a real medical record all along, and then at the end, something gets changed, right? I mean, that's all trackable, especially in the EMRs today.
Right. All the dots are checked. Every click is monitored. But so the feds went in and said that what ended up happening was they charged the hospital itself with the conspiracy to defraud the U.S. government, healthcare fraud, and then they even included forfeiture allegations to try and recover every dollar that was benefited from these illegal acts. Because like you said, it's not like they can go and like arrest a building. You can't do that, but you can hurt the institution, the board, the CEO, the system itself by penalizing it financially to the point where it's like ruined,
Yeah, so I guess just to be clear, this is, a big hospital is being held criminally liable for the fraudulent actions of one of its credentialed physicians, because, that's what we have to really look at. That physician is working under that hospital. And I mean, the CEO, the board, everybody knows about it. So who can we bring in with the handcuffs? That's what I want to know. Along with the doctor.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure there was a huge overhaul of everything.
Of admin, yeah.
Right. What the DOJ did make clear is that if your staff knows, then your hospital knows.
100%.
Yeah, employee knowledge becomes institutional knowledge. And when employees knew about falsified documents, somebody had to be filing that. They knew about unnecessary procedures, forged dates, and they didn't stop it. And worse, they just kept processing those claims. And then, so in turn, that really became the hospital's crime.
Yeah. And I mean, at that point, that's not a credentialing issue anymore, right? That's a compliance failure. Everybody knows about it. It's a documentation failure. It's a leadership disaster. It's a billing failure. It's a quality assurance failure.
Right. And it's all wrapped up really in one very expensive indictment. And get this, had the hospital acted earlier when the first red flags popped up, like they could have avoided it. But they didn't, because the surgeon brought in big revenue and they prioritized billing over boundaries.
Yeah. The patients became dollars, as we see every single time. And now they might have to forfeit every dollar tied to the fraud, like you said, and maybe some corporate monitorship. I hear they do that sometimes. The fines that they have to pay. But again, when you have trillions and trillions of dollars, is fines really a hard thing? I don't feel like it is, So maybe we put it down to reputation. Like, do they care about their reputation now? Was the community alerted? Do the people know that this has happened? Or are they keeping it hush hush? I'm sure they know, right?
Right. Of course. And I'm just glad that the DOJ is like doing something right. And the reason that they did this is because they're trying to send a message that if a hospital fails to stop egregious conduct, especially when the staff sees it happening, then that hospital can and will be charged. So credentialing and peer review teams aren't just paper pushers anymore. They are the firewall. And this is why I love how now credentialing is really incorporating, payer enrollment and an entire billing side of things, you can see how these worlds interconnect with each other. When we're looking at case logs, like, these were all done on a Saturday. That's interesting.
There's 59 sterilizations that were done on a Saturday. That is so weird.
So it's just really interesting how the worlds are really mixing and how we're all working together and how we can together stop this type of fraud and abuse from happening.
Yeah, because when we started in credentialing, privileging was one thing and payer enrollment was another thing. And so, it would always be so funny to me when the admin would say, oh, why does payer enrollment need your information? Or, we would say, and then so it came to a point where me and payer enrollment were working together, I'm doing the privilege and stuff. The provider's coming in. Let's just get the signature pages. And, and then like you said, now everybody is seeing these things need to be together, I'm sorry. Let me jump off my bandwagon. Can we talk a little bit about why this hospital indictment is so rare? Because that's really the serious thing that we're talking about today. And it's because in the world of healthcare law, hospitals almost never face any type of criminal indictment. It's always put on the provider. And that's why Credentialing Chronicles is constantly saying protect your NPI, because it's your NPI that they have to use to do this type of egregious billing. And that's because when fraud happens in a hospital setting, the government is usually pursuing civil enforcement under the False Claims Act, not criminal prosecution to the hospital. And so civil claims result in what? Fines, settlements, and compliance agreements, but not jail time or criminal records. And so while I jest with Nyleen and say, can we take the hospital out in handcuffs, right? We really can't. And so I guess, what makes this case against this hospital different, Nyleen, right?
Well, knowledge plus an inaction to work on that knowledge is criminal complicity with the physician. You can't just blame the physician for this because someone allowed that behavior to continue. Right. It's not just some rogue doctor acting in secret. The indictment shows the hospital staff and the leadership knew that he was performing medically unnecessary and dangerous procedures, falsifying documentation, misclassifying inpatient-only surgeries as outpatient to boost the reimbursement. So the institutional awareness is what essentially triggered that criminal exposure.
True. And when you're talking really quick about a rogue doctor, it's like, how far rogue can a doctor get, right? If all the systems are working, so again, it really goes back to the hospital.
Right. And the culture, because I've been in situations myself. I have had a physician to tell me, hey, just go ahead and bill for this. And I'm like, I can't do that. Or just add this to this, or can we make this a level 5? And I was like, maybe not today. Like, did you do this, or that? So, but again, I was in a safe space where I have a physician that respects what I say and listens and is willing to adjust. But if you're scared for your job, or you are working paycheck to paycheck and you are just thinking like, oh my goodness, I'm scared to lose my job.
No, you're right. I could see that. Or you're new to billing.
Or you're new to billing and you don't know. Or you're new to credentialing and you don't even know what to look for.
I had a question today. What are case logs? How do I request them? Somebody's asking me for them. I'm like, oh no, let me, and that's why I'm always trying to give out knowledge for free. Cause I'm like, if there's people in this industry, they got to know what they're doing. We can't sit here and hold this information.
So I'm just going to take 2 seconds. I had the cutest question today by my intern. I told her that she needed to fax something. She looked at me and said, what is the fax? And then it was so cute.
We can't be that old. Am I that old? I'm not.
We are that old. No, we are that old. We are that old.
You guys, me and Nyleen don't want to be that old. I don't want to be that old, Nyleen.
So listen, anyway. So yes, faxes can also be tracked and used as part of your documentation that the DOJ will use.
keep your successful transmission confirmation. That's an important part of the fax process.
There's a PSA of the faxing process. Okay, so long story short, our story, it goes beyond negligence. It's knowing, aiding, and abetting fraud as an employee of the facility and as a physician.
Nyleen, you sound like an episode of Law and Order, girl. Ooh, say it again. Aiding and what?
Aiding and abetting.
Okay, so you think that would be like the wildest story of the week, right? A hospital indicted a surgeon called Dr. Saturday, sentenced to nearly 6 decades, and a compliance culture built on denial. That alone would fill a season of Credentialing Chronicles Law and Order, I think. Well, don't you think that as well?
Ooh, Law and Order Credentialing Edition.
I think we should do Credentialing Chronicles Law and Order. Don't get me out here thinking too hard creatively. Is that the craziest scandal, though, or do we have one more or another?
No. Wait for it. You know, I can't just leave everybody with just one, because just when you think that the industry couldn't possibly sink any lower, we're going to slide into a $400 million scandal. Because, girl, $18 million ain't enough for me. We're going to talk about...
Not 400. Oh, 400 is a lot of money.
Yes, so the hospitals didn't even just look the other way. They opened the door for them, wrote the checks, and then thanked the people for what? Funneling patients their way.
I'm still on the 400 million. That's how much the Bezos wedding cost. You know, I think they said it was around 400 million. I mean, we're talking bribes, babies, and backdoor deals for $400 million, huh?
All of it. Yes, it wasn't just care coordination. It was like a cash for referrals disguised as community outreach. And the executives, of course, well, let's just say they didn't mind padding their admission numbers as long as no one read the fine print.
That's crazy. All right, sis, we'll spill it. Who sold out prenatal care for profit? I mean, that's going to be the sad part, right?
Okay, Shannon. Well, if you thought the Dr. Saturday surgeries were wild, well, this is just dirty, strategic, systemic, and deeply unethical. And I'm going to have a complete real life scenario that just happened to me to explain why everyone needs to stop what they're doing and do it correctly. But anyway, this is about prenatal clinics, bribes, hospitals, and corporate execs signing off on compliance forms, okay, to orchestrate fraud and referrals. And this is going to take place in, well, my home state right now of Georgia. So prenatal clinics, there's a lot of prenatal clinics that are designed to serve low-income Spanish-speaking mothers that are supposed to be offering care, but instead they were being used as a feeder system.
A what now?
A feeder system. So basically the clinics would refer pregnant patients exclusively only to certain hospitals, but that was because it was in exchange for an under-the-table cash payment from the hospital executives. So it wasn't a care-based decision. It was purely a financial transaction targeting vulnerable women just to boost Medicaid numbers.
No. So instead of saying, here's where you get the best prenatal, they're going to take care of you and your baby, they're saying, here's where we will get the fattest billing margins, because that's what, right?
Exactly. And the ringleader, of course, the CEO, the chief executive officer,
of the hospital or of the clinics?
The hospital was personally involved in structuring the bribes, and he didn't do it alone. Got the senior VP of operations for the hospital chain to sign off on annual compliance certifications to the federal government.
That is crazy. Let me guess. He checked the box and said, we're fully compliant with anti-kick statutes, and then literally went out and was helping the CEO do these things.
Right. We do not commit fraud. I attest. I am okay. I do not, work against the anti-kickback statute. Yeah. Well, you better believe it. The DOJ said that, well, actually, you did know that the bribes were happening. You helped design the contracts to make it, and you made it look like you were paying for like marketing or outreach services, but really it was just straight up pay to play. They were paying the clinics a per pregnant patient sent to their hospitals.
No, and point blank, that is Medicaid fraud.
Yes, point blank. The hospitals billed over $400 million in Medicaid services of these patients tied to illegal referrals. Let me say that again, $400 million. The clinics didn't just refer patients, they sold access to low-income women in exchange for profit.
Oh my goodness. Are you kidding me? So tell me, what finally blew the lid off of this? Because it seems like it went on for a long time.
Yes, so the executives did this for over a decade. It was actually 13 years of bribery, fraud, and fake compliance. So it was a combination of whistleblowers and an aggressive federal investigation. And then finally, when all the dust settled, multiple hospitals pled guilty. And this one major, very, very prominent healthcare system in Georgia that may or may not start with a T, agreed to actually pay $513 million in criminal and civil penalties, which of that, $145 million was in fraudulent Medicaid and Medicare payments tied directly to these referrals.
That's more than some hospital systems are worth. $513 million? Oh my God.
Right. And let me tell you, this wasn't just some rogue frontline staffer. This was orchestrated from the top. C-suite execs were falsifying the books, overriding compliance. Yes, making sure everything looked clean on paper, even while the referrals kept rolling in.
Yeah, so let's talk credentialing. So if you're a medical staff services or compliances and think that this is just like a legal issue, I mean, we kind of have to think again.
Yes, because you have to ask who's being referred, why, and what's the financial trail. Okay, if your hospital is suddenly getting 80% of referrals from one clinic across the town, that's not organic, that's engineered.
If the clinic's owner is cashing checks from your CFO, that's not a vendor. I mean, that's what, a co-conspirator.
Right. And this situation preys on lack of knowledge of people. So I'm going to do a little side note. And, I know we don't really talk about personal stories here, but because we were doing this episode and I did so much research on this and I was there, changing forms when the law was very clear and said, if you refer patients to radiology, please ensure that your radiology forms include a listing of all the places that your patients can go for this test, even if your doctor has a financial interest in said facility. Okay. I worked right next to a urologist and I helped them develop their new forms because of the situation. Now, they did get creative and you can be creative and compliant, just not fraudulent. I got a t-shirt that says that. But so I went to see a doctor and I needed a test ordered. Girl, they told me, oh, would you like the script from this hospital or this hospital? I looked at them and said, no, I want a blank script so I can take it to the imaging facility that I choose. They're like, well, we can't do that. I'm like, excuse me? You can't do what? You can't give me a blank script so I can choose where I want to go for healthcare? So I didn't want to be that difficult patient, but I did tell them to subscribe to Credentialing Chronicles. So if the nurse practitioner is listening that helped me that day, just letting you know, you could be in violation of the anti-kickback statute. And I didn't want to sound like a wise Alec and tell your office off and tell your administrator that they don't know what they're doing. But you cannot only refer patients to one financial institution to receive care. That is illegal. Okay. I, as a patient, have a right to choose where I want to go and get my testing performed at. Back to credentialing. This is where credentialing and contracting collide. And as an MSP, we tend to focus on licenses, malpractice, and board certifications, but we also need to understand referral relationships. And especially third-party clinics. So we're talking physician offices, okay? Who owns that clinic? Do they have surgery centers attached to them? Are there financial ties to the hospital? Are we tracking the flow of patients and the money?
Yeah, I mean, and that's really the biggest, because the government will track it if you won't. And if you don't know what's happening inside your system, the feds will show up in the form of subpoena and they'll have everything, your whole playbook. They'll know what's going on.
Right. This case set a precedent. It showed that hospitals can be held criminally accountable, not just for what they do, but for the actions they fund and facilitate. Whether it's a bribe masked as a marketing contract or an outreach fee, if the motive is illegal patient steering, that's fraud.
Yeah, and you're 100% right. And for providers, this should be a wake-up call too. Just because you didn't write the check doesn't mean that you're not part of the scheme. Remember, they need your NPI to do this.
Exactly. If you're taking referrals, delivering care, billing federal programs based on tainted patient streams, or you took an extra lunch and that's the only script because it's the hospital across the street that gave you scripts. There are scripts available from every radiology imaging center in your state, in your area, and you can write a blank script doesn't have a hospital system on the top of it, okay? So that stain doesn't come off with just a disclaimer.
Exactly. So let's land the plane. What's the headline here? What do you think it is, Nyleen?
Well, if your patient pipeline is being purchased, then your whole house is at risk. Period.
And if you're in credentialing or compliance and you're not asking questions, you might just be out of the loop and you might be next on the witness list.
Right. Well, if your credentialing providers are overseeing clinic contracts, then you're not asking where the referrals are coming from or who's getting paid for them. Then you're not just missing red flags. You're kind of just part of the problem.
Yeah, and this is stuff that makes you triple check your privileging packets and your referral logs and your policy and everything. You want to make sure, credentialing and compliance failures, the hospital's granting and renewing privileges, like we've seen for the doctor. And that's just a big issue. A previous hospital revoked his privileges because he was doing unnecessary surgeries. So what did he do? He went to a different hospital and did it all and actually found a hospital to be complicit with him, correct?
Exactly. These weren't clerical errors. These were calculated. Credentialing crimes, okay? Billing crimes. Both stories, they show exactly what happens when revenue gets prioritized over regulation, and silence is what gets rewarded.
Okay, well, let's just get to our PSA because I think we could talk about this all day with everything, Nyleen.
Oof, don't get me started. Well, doctors. Okay, listen, you're ultimately in charge of your healthcare facility. So if you got an administrator that's referring patients to only one place for their x-rays or their MRIs or their imaging, please stop that. Okay, stop. Just stop. You're going to get in trouble. Your clinic can get in trouble. Credentialing isn't just a hoop to jump through. It's not just paperwork. It's a statement of your integrity. And if you've had red flags, just disclose them. It's fine. And if you're being pressured to stay silent or refer only to one facility or getting extra gifts from one particular hospital versus another, that's unethical. And you should speak up and correct these practices in your medical facilities.
And to my fellow MSPs, you are the gatekeepers. We say that all the time. We just want you to know how important you are and how serious this career path that you've decided to take. You are the last line of defense before someone steps into that OR, before somebody sees a patient. You have to trust your gut. If the credentialing file smells off, say something. Even if you document it, the peer really didn't go into it. The peer really didn't want to respond. Document that so that the committee at least knows that there was something in your gut that was telling you something, because your signature might just be the one that lets a fraudster in or keeps a patient safe, right? And we don't just check boxes. Remember that we don't just check boxes, we protect lives.
Yes, and in this one, we're going to give a little lesson for hospitals and healthcare systems. Just remember, hospitals can be held criminally liable for enabling physician misconduct, especially when there is documented internal awareness. Knowledge of employees is knowledge of the hospital. Credentialing and compliance departments are legal shields, but only when they're empowered and supported to behave appropriately. And ignoring red flags, it's just institutional complicity. So what does every patient need to know?
again, this is about you. I know that we go into a lot of stuff that's very healthcare specific and very credentialing specific, but you have to realize that every episode is dedicated to our patients, our moms, our dads, our grandparents, our children, ourselves, to every patient out there. You have a right to ask questions. Ask your provider where they're trained, who oversees them, and whether they're board certified. It's not rude. It's smart. Do your due diligence. Just because, behind every white coat is a system that's supposed to keep you safe. But as we keep showing you on all of these episodes that we're doing, it's not always as safe as it's perceived to be. And when the system fails, you have the right to know, patients.
Yes, and you can choose where you want to get your imaging done, guys. You can choose what doctor you want to see. You can call your insurance and see what's in network. You've got the right to choose. All right, Shannon, I think that's a wrap. What do you think?
I think so. Case and warning, all healthcare facilities, credentialing isn't just a formality, like we said. And, really, if today didn't make you audit your reappointment process or call your legal team about your referral policy just to make sure, then you better listen again.
Yes, because trust me, what you don't verify might just land you in a press release and on Credentialing Chronicles.
Exactly. Could you imagine? And if the FBI shows up, don't say that Credentialing Chronicles didn't warn you, because we told you that if you didn't check, that could happen.
We'll see y'all next time. Follow us on Instagram. Yes, at Cred Chronicles. We're on
share.
Yes, everything. Look us up on LinkedIn and listen to us on all your favorite podcasting platforms. See you guys next time.
Thank you. Whoo, that was a lot of tea. Who knew doctors had more drama than reality TV?
And if you think that was wild, just wait till next week. We've got more stories, more scandals, and more credentialing chaos coming your way.
Hit that follow button, and don't forget, just because they have an MD doesn't mean they have a clean record.
See you next time on Credentialing Chronicles. Stay credentialed, not canceled.